Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rebecca Morris. I am the manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, ADCET for short. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a woman in my mid-ish 40s. I have long brown hair, and today I'm wearing a white shirt with a pale green floral pattern and clear framed glasses. This webinar is being live captioned. To activate the captions, click the CC button in the toolbar that is located either on the top or the bottom of your screen. We also have captions available via browser, which Kylie will now add to the chat box. ADCET is hosted on Lutruwita, Tasmanian Aboriginal lands. And in the spirit of reconciliation, ADCET respectfully acknowledges the Lutruwita nations and also recognises the Aboriginal history and culture of the land. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and to the many Aboriginal people that did not make elder status. I also acknowledge all other countries and lands from participants in this meeting. Please let us know in the chat where you're dialing in from. And I warmly welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us here today. Today's webinar, all about ADCET, is presented by myself and ADCET's National Assistive Technology Project Officer, Darren Britton. Today, we'll be highlighting how ADCET can support you through the use of our free resources, professional development opportunities, community building opportunities, and direct consultation services. You'll also be hearing from some special guests. You'll meet them later. Professionals, academics, and students from across the tertiary sector who we collaborate with and who do some pretty amazing things. Before we begin, a few more housekeeping details. This webinar is being live captioned by Sharon from Captify Live and will be recorded. The recording will be available on ADCET in the coming days. This presentation will run for about 45 to 50 or so minutes, hopefully. Then at the end, there will be hopefully 10 minutes or so for questions. We've put together a list of resources and services that we'll be referring to throughout this webinar, and Kylie will now add the link to that page in the chat now. Throughout the presentation, feel free to use the chat box with us and each other, but please remember to choose everyone so everyone can read what you have to say. We're happy to answer any questions at the end, so if you have a question you would like asked, please use the Q&A box rather than the chat box. So let's start with a quick overview of today's webinar. So I'll be running you through a very brief summary of ADCET's history, our current impact, our core purpose and target audience. Then we're going to jump into the practical ways ADCET can support you, our services, activities and resources. We're going to talk about the projects we've been working on and our future hopes and dreams for ADCET. And most importantly, how you can get involved and make the most of what we do. For those who may be new to our work, ADCET is a national resource dedicated to promoting equity of opportunity, access, experience and outcomes for Australian tertiary education students with disability. We've been serving the sector for 23 years, hosted by the University of Tasmania and currently funded by the Department of Education. Throughout our history, we've received additional funding from various government bodies for targeted project and resource development, all aimed at promoting accessible and inclusive education. The infograph on the screen now shows some statistics we compiled late last year, and it gives you an idea about ADCET's current impact. As you can see, more than 1.2 million website engagements annually, at least 8,350 interactions with our webinars annually, on average, 855 podcast listens each year, 19,000 downloads of our various guidelines, more than 143,000 views on resources targeted at students. And as you can see, the list goes on and you get the idea. So our core purpose is straightforward. We provide practical guidance, leadership, and advice on disability higher education and VET. We enable, improve, and accelerate institutional support for students with disability, and we foster a build it once, use it many times approach to disability support. Our overarching motto for everything we do is simple but powerful: supporting you, supporting students. We believe that accessibility is everybody's business, and we serve 4 key audiences: disability practitioners across higher education and vet institutions, educators, academics, and professional staff seeking inclusive teaching practices. We support students with disability and their families, carers, and advocates. And we also support education leaders and policymakers seeking insight into what's happening on the ground. That's more than enough for me right now. So I'm going to hand over to Darren.
Excellent. Thank you, Beck. As a national clearinghouse supporting inclusive education for students with disability in higher education and VET, ADCET has a wide range of practical resources, tools, and information for disability practitioners, educators, and students. On our website, you'll find a range of online resources, including guides and guidelines, fact sheets, assistive technology information, videos, news updates, etc., etc. The list goes on. There is also our regular newsletter, which highlights current sector news, new resources, and upcoming events, which you can subscribe to and share with your colleagues. And as Beck mentioned earlier, we've got 5,000 plus current subscribers to that list and to our newsletter. Wherever possible, ADCET promotes good practice by sharing real examples from across the sector. Case studies and disability practice in the spotlight profiles showcase how different institutions are improving accessibility and supporting students so that you can see what works in real practice in the real world and adapt those ideas to your own context. I'm now lucky as well to talk with some of the people that we work with, and I'll pass over to Danielle Kutschel, who's an award-winning journalist who we're lucky enough to have develop and write our disability practice in the spotlight articles, who's going to give you a brief bit of an insight into how we highlight great practice across the sector. So I'll throw to you, Danielle.
Thanks, Darren. I'm Danielle. I'm a journalist. I've been with ADCET for, what would be coming up to a decade now, I think. So yes, and it's basically my job is to help write these spotlight pieces that then go up on our website. It really is honestly a privilege to talk to you all and see what you're all doing in your little spaces and how we can get the word out a little bit more and let other people know what you're doing, how they can be inspired by you, and how they can potentially replicate that content. So what a spotlight piece is, or what it involves, is basically I do a bit of an interview with you. That interview can be over the phone, it can be over email, it can be over Zoom, whatever your jam is, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. And I just ask you a few questions about what it is that you're doing, how it's helping students, what makes it interesting or innovative, what's inspired you to kick this off. I put it together into a draft. You get full editing and review rights, so you get to have a look at it. Add anything in that you think that we've missed or change any words. And then it goes up on our website and we share it around on our socials and let people know what you're doing. It's a very easy process, and I know it can be quite nerve-wracking when you haven't spoken to a journalist before, or you're feeling people get a little bit shy, and that's okay. We're here to put your mind at ease and help you feel comfortable. So we try and make it as easy a process as possible. We've covered a lot over the past 10 years. We've covered programs in Vietnam. We've covered new programs for neurodiverse students. That's come up a lot in the past few years. As a neurodiverse person myself, that was actually probably one of my favorites because it made me realize what I missed when I was at university. So honestly, we're open to anything interesting and innovative that we can put into a spotlight piece, whether it's a staff member who's won an award for something they're doing or a new program that you're kicking off. It's really a very open brief. But as I said, if you have any questions or if you have a program or something you think is good that you can that you think that is worth a spotlight, let us know. And yeah, we'll see what we can do, see what we can put together. And I'll throw back to Darren.
Excellent. Thank you, Danielle. Look, and again, sometimes we forget what we're doing might be innovative to somebody else. We just think it's business as usual and something we're doing. And one thing that's always struck me with some of the practitioners in the spotlight, while some people might again think this is what we do is what everybody does, that's not necessarily the case. So having that opportunity to see practice, and where possible, we try not to say best practice, but good practice, because there's always room to improve across the board. So yeah, you might be surprised. Some of the things that you're doing would be of wonderful news and information to the sector. So, have a think, is there something you're doing, something colleagues are doing that we need to shout out to the sector, because we're always looking for those articles, and they're wonderful to read what's happening across the sector. But thank you very much, Danielle. We need to give you a Lifetime Achievement Award for sticking with us for so long, and fantastic pieces that you write. So really appreciate that. One of the other things that we offer through the ADCET website, of course, is our professional development opportunities, which is a big focus for ADCET. We offer live and recorded webinars and other learning activities that you can access on demand. These cover topics such as inclusive teaching, reasonable adjustments, supporting particular disability cohorts, and through other various articles, etc., and news stories that we do in focuses. We have a range of podcasts, and which are some new ones, and also audio versions of popular webinars that we convert across to audio for easy listening, through to interviews with key educational thinkers in the sector and current events. Our latest series, I Lotter Things, which is inclusive learning opportunities through AI, is with myself, Elizabeth Hitches, and Joe Houghton, and it's a series that investigates the convergence of universal design for learning, accessibility, and artificial intelligence, very topical for the moment. And we've had some fantastic discussions on that, on those topics, on emerging technologies and their impact on education. And we've spoken to some experts from around the world, which is what we get to do, which is fantastic, about how much AI and technology is really truly transforming this educational space and support for students and staff with disabilities. Some of our wonderful guests have included UDL guru Thomas Tobin, which many of you may be aware of from our UDL symposium and from other articles that he's done and books. Michelle Soriano and Brian Dean from CAST, which is the home of UDL, Universal Design for Learning. And we've had a fantastic discussion recently with Samo Varsik and Lydia Vosberg from the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, who released recently a paper about the potential impact of artificial intelligence on education and inclusion in education from a global perspective. We're not alone in this transformation that's happening, and it's hard to sometimes keep on top of those things. So we offer a variety of channels for people to engage. Finally, ADCET coordinates a suite of e-learning programs, from our popular disability awareness program that's been running for many years to our newest program on UDL 3.0, which is available on our recently released ADCET Academy website. These online programs give staff structured opportunities to deepen their understanding of disability, universal design for learning, and inclusive practice, and they can be used for individual development or built into existing staff training programs. Overall, ADCET's there to support you with information, examples, and learning opportunities to help create more inclusive and accessible educational environments. Our work also includes key annual events, and two major ones that we do help bring the sector together. First of those, the ADCET Accessibility in Action Awards, which are held each year in conjunction with Global Accessibility Awareness Day. These awards celebrate individual teams and projects, and demonstrate innovation, leadership, and good practice in accessibility. Each year, we continue to be amazed and pleased to recognise the depth and breadth of work undertaken across the sector to make a difference in improving access and inclusion in our institutions. So hats on to start thinking about nominations for this year's award, which will open in the not too distant future. Another major spotlight on our calendar, which has previously been mentioned, is our Universal Design for Learning Symposium. That's our UDL Symposium, which showcases practical strategies and research for making learning more inclusive across the tertiary education sector. This event connects educators, disability practitioners, and researchers who are interested in embedding UDL in their teaching and into their institutional practices. Now, one such person who's been involved in that is Trina Bianchini, who's a wonderful friend of ADCET and someone who's been engaged in the UDL space and with ADCET for as long as I can remember, Trina, who's going to tell us about her involvement with ADCET, UDL, from a vet practitioner perspective. So I'll pass over to you, Trina. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Yes, as Darren said, my name's Trina Bianchini. I'm a white female in my early 60s, and I use the pronouns she, her. I work at TAFE SA as a teaching and learning specialist in academic development, and I have a portfolio lead role in accessibility and inclusive education. And today I'm joining you from the lands of the Kaurna people, which is the lands of the Adelaide Plains. So as Darren mentioned, I've worked with ADCET for a while, or for a long time, in various capacities. So today I'll talk about my involvement with the UDL Symposium and really recommend that you have a look at what you can do to fit that into your calendar this year. It's a fabulous event. But also just generally how I work with ADCET and basically tap into their resources, including Darren being an amazing resource, very consistently. So with the symposium, I've been involved in different levels. I've attended and I've presented, and I've also been involved in the organising committee. So it really is a great coming together of like-minded people. Everyone is at different stages. So those still wrangling with the idea of what universal design for learning is and how they may go about implementing that in their own practice, right through to how do you drive it, how do you implement it across the board within your organisation. So there are those that are completely at ease with it in their practices and those really starting to kick goals in their organisation. So it's for people of every level in their adoption of universal design for learning practices. So don't be concerned if you don't know a lot about it, you will learn a lot. And so I would challenge anybody to attend the symposium, not come away with some amazing ideas, but also just the simple concept that we talk about a lot, which is +1, just learn one little new practice and put, engage that in everything that you do. So I highly recommend that and would love to meet you at this year's symposium. How does ADCET work with the vet sector more generally? Well, for me and the role that I have, they help me a lot with the everyday implementation and advice of how to go about things. They do provide incredible resources for both higher ed and vet, but I think the clincher for vet is their understanding of the differences and the different challenges that the vet sector faces from, research and funding approaches. That higher ed, it's a little easier probably in that space, through to the direct, absolute black and white training requirements in the vet sector, and how do we go about applying UDL and looking to remove barriers and reduce the need for reasonable adjustments. So I think that's something that would resonate with most of you in the vet sector. In my experience, or in my position, in vet, I'm a very much jack of all trades at TAFE SA, probably master of none, but very much use ADCET to support me in those areas that I don't know about. We don't have teams of people in, managing all the different aspects of accessibility and inclusive education. So I get drawn into lots of different things, particularly technology, IT requirements, procurement requirements, policies and procedures, and no matter what the question is, big or little, I can always seek advice from ADCET. I use the ADCET Assist service regularly. I think Darren will probably talk a little bit more about that, but you can just go on, book an appointment, and then bring whatever questions you have. And so I highly recommend that, particularly around the tech and accessibility. When we get new technology, we have to write guidelines about how to make them accessible. And I always seek Darren's assistance and then, use his advice in talking about, we're trying to do best practice sometimes, so that I can present the way that we're going to do things to the educators, knowing that I've got the best practice advice. This week I've been working particularly with a couple of educators who will be supporting a student undertaking a music qualification, a certificate for, who is visually impaired. And we've been able to share the ADCET video of the tech the student actually uses. The name of it is escaping me at the minute. It is a note, a Google Note device, I think there's a correct term for it, but just a 3-minute video that showed that ADCET had, that showed somebody using that device. We were able to get the educators to see how the student was going to be accessing their materials. So then we can take the step back and look at how we're providing everything. So it's right down to those little things that you can share with other people in your organisation. So back to you, Darren.
Excellent. Thank you, Trina. And we didn't pay Trina for those lovely comments. No, as Trina said, please do reach out if you've got questions. We've got services designed for those things, but it's fantastic to have vet sector involvement. And again, as you pointed out, the challenges can be quite different, even though there's some similarities, they can be very different. That's there. So again, it is a wide and ranging community of practitioners and professional staff, and we learn from everybody just as much as hopefully you learn from us. So alongside our annual events, ADCET also supports a number of communities of practices, or COPs as we call them, just without using the theme song, copyright and royalty concerns. But these COPs provide regular opportunities for people with shared interests to connect, share resources, and identify ideally solutions to common issues collectively. We currently host COPs for disability managers in education, for colleagues working on universal design, for staff supporting neurodivergent students, and for those focused on specifically assistive technology. These events and communities help build these networks and help us to share expertise and keep inclusive practice moving forward across the sector. I might now ask for Rebecca to give a brief overview of the Disability Managers COP and what that's all about.
Thank you, Darren. It's Rebecca again. And I'm going to be putting on my other hat, my other professional hat, which is the disability manager at the University of Canberra, because I can speak about involvement in my capacity of actually having benefited from this community of practice. So ADCET facilitates the disability managers, like for student services at university, so higher education. It brings together all of the managers across the sector, across Australia, to collaborate. ADCET facilitates bi-monthly meetings generally and provides information and connections with the Department of Education, with the National Student Ombudsman, with current research, with reporting issues around the DSF, a whole range of pertinent topics to discuss amongst the managers. Personally, I found it just brilliant in terms of that networking and collaborating, sharing ideas, looking at how services are being managed and administered in different universities, in different settings, and really strengthening those connections to build best practice. As Darren said, good practice. We're constantly evolving, benchmarking what we're doing constantly, and making sure what we're doing is fit for purpose. So yes, Darren, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. And now I'll go on to our Universal Design for Learning community of practice. And I might throw to Justin. I think you've been there since the start of the UDL COP.
Yeah, thank you very much, Darren. And hello to everyone here today who's with us in person, and for those people watching or listening to the video later. Yes, I have been involved for, I was trying to work it out, maybe 21, 22, can't remember the exact date. But look, my name's Justin Wiley. I'm from Central Queensland University. I'm a balding, bearded, middle-aged man wearing dark-rimmed glasses and a dark shirt today. I'm a project and training officer in the Accessibility and Equity team at CQ Uni, and have a background in education and learning design. The ADCET UDL COP's been critical as a part of my professional UDL journey. As I said, I think I first got involved around 2022 with the COP, but I'd attended some ADCET sessions prior to that. And equity and inclusion in education is critical for my practice. So the opportunity to network, work together, and hear about how other institutions across Australia, New Zealand, and internationally are researching UDL, implementing it, has always been really valuable to my position, and also to our institution's UDL and inclusion journey. the fact that we've got members from both vet and higher education, as Trina was talking about before, is also a really key benefit for us, as CQ University is a dual sector institution. And even though there are very many common practices about reducing barriers to teaching and learning in UDL, there are also some differences in the context. So it's great to have the opportunity to hear from both vet and or vocational education and higher education. The guest speakers and topics that we have are always incredibly relevant, and if not directly relevant at the time, they're always something that you come back to in the future. I have copious quantities of notes, and often something rings a bell and I go searching back and find, a link to a video or some information which, helps me with a particular issue or topic. It's all about inclusive practice no matter what, and reflecting on how to reduce those barriers. The ADCET UDL Symposium is an offshoot from the COP, and Trina spoke about that again before, and it gives us a great chance to hear from amazing researchers and educators from across the globe, so allowing us to build our skills and understanding and to develop and increase our UDL toolkits. And I've been fortunate to be involved in organising and running the symposium over the last 2 years, and have found it amazing, both in terms of meeting the people who are attending, but also seeing the different presenters, etc., that come along. There's great topics all the time. So I just wanted to quote from Aussie icon Molly Meldrum to say, do yourself a favour and come along and join the conversation. It's an amazing supportive community, and I'd highly recommend becoming a member of the COP. Whether you're new to UDL or you're already a practitioner, there's always something in there for everyone. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you for doing us a favour. Yes, good to quote Molly. I suppose that might go with the middle-aged, balding kind of an old, we need Molly's hat. I think I can agree with you there. But thank you very much. Look, as Justin said, all of our COPs aren't for necessarily for advanced users or expert users or all of those things. Come along, ask some questions, get involved, even if you're just new and thinking about universal design and how does this fit with what I'm doing. And it's not just for educators. There's a lot of professional staff as well, which can benefit a lot from the universal design for learning principles and getting to know what's happening in teaching and learning, etc. So thank you very much, Justin. Katie is next on my list, and she's going to tell us all about the Neurodiversity COP.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Darren. I'm Katie. I'm from the University of Newcastle. I'm a white, very late 40s woman with blonde and pink curly hair. I am the Neurodivergent Engagement and Support Coordinator here at UON. And I've been in that particular role since sort of mid last year. And coming into that role, I was sort of thinking about how at all our different institutions, we're all trying to support neurodivergent students better. And wouldn't it be great if we had a space where we could share different ideas and resources and make the most of what we have available, so we're not kind of all reinventing the wheel over and over on our own. So put it out that on the Austed list to see if anyone was interested in being a part of a community practice around this. Thankfully, Rebecca stepped up and said she'd be happy to help me run that through ADCET, which has been amazing and extremely helpful. I don't know how I would have managed without her. So thank you to Rebecca and ADCET for that. So we have bi-monthly meetings where we'll have particular topics that we're discussing, have people from different institutions sharing what they're doing, and then opportunities for people to discuss and I guess learn from our colleagues across the sector. It's open to people in vet and university, and we have people from a range of different roles as well, from academics, librarians, counsellors, as well as within the disability services within those institutions. We're also in the process of setting up a couple of Padlets, so there's space to share resources online with the group, as well as have some discussion boards where people can, I guess, communicate and talk through different ideas and get some support and feedback from the group. Yeah, so that's kind of what it's about. And yeah, we've got quite a largish group now, and it's still open to more members if people are interested.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Katie. Look, and there's links on the website and that information which Kylie's posting into chat of how you can get involved into the various into the various communities of practice.
Yeah.
But thanks, Kate. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Darren.
Lastly, we'll bring up the assistive technology community of practice. Unlike the other communities of practice, this is an invite-only community of practice. It's for people that are working directly with assistive technologies, and it's really a knowledge share and networking opportunity for those people that are kind of on the front line with assistive technology or whose roles involve assistive technology directly. We currently have members, I think, from 45 different institutions or something like that, and a couple of representatives from each that have been nominated. And one of those is Amy. So I'll throw to Amy, who's going to tell us all about the assistive technology community practice.
Thank you, Darren. Yeah, I'm Amy Webster. I'm a Senior Disability Advisor at Queensland University of Technology, or QUT, based in Brisbane. I'm a white 35-year-old female with shoulder-length red hair. I would say I'm a proud ginger. And I'm wearing blue-rimmed glasses and a dark shirt. And I'm also sporting my Proud to Wear the Sunflower lanyard, as QUT has fairly recently adopted the Hidden Disability Sunflower Network as well, which is a great piece of work that we're very proud of. I joined the ADCET as a fresh-faced disability advisor back in 2021. And one of the first things I did was I enthusiastically put my hand up to take on responsibility for looking after assistive tech here at QUT within our disability and accessibility services area. And I did that despite having little to no assistive tech experience. So my enthusiasm got the better of me there. But part of that role or that responsibility was to organise licenses, train students, and really field any queries that came through from our cohorts about what assistive tech is available, working with students with different learning needs and different disabilities, and working with them to figure out how we could enhance their learning experience. So a big part of that opportunity was to represent QUT at the Assistive Tech Community of Practice. And that's been invaluable. Darren's told me I've got to keep this short and sweet because I could talk about this for a long time. But this has been invaluable in not only my own learning, stepping into that area, but also just informing the direction that QUT has gone in terms of our assistive tech offerings, future-proofing for our students, and really leaning into that UDL approach, so that Universal Design for Learning. So the way I would describe our ADCET is it's a great place for sharing knowledge and resources amongst friends. And I say that because it's a really collaborative team. We all take our work very seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And I've really valued the casual, collegiate conversation that we have that allows people to come in and feel comfortable to ask any questions about assistive tech. Nothing feels like a question that's too big or too small or too silly, and we really just use each other as a sounding board. And there's vast experience across the ADCET, which has brought on my experience leaps and bounds, and also just given me that safety net to feel comfortable to say to my students, I don't actually know the answer to that, but I can contact my colleagues, my friends in the ADCET to say, what do you suggest, and draw on other people's experience. So the email list that comes as part of the ADCET has been great. So outside of those semi-regular conversations, we can reach out via the email list and get some really good responses from across the sector, which is really valuable. And as Darren said, it's designed for those who work in AT-specific roles. I was doing a lot of that off the side of my desk, which was a great value to have this as the resource. But we are now in a great position at QUT that we have a designated accessibility officer position, and the ADCOP has really allowed us to seamlessly integrate that position into our team and draw on the existing support and resources that are available without having to start from scratch with that position and reinvent the wheel. So yeah, can't speak highly enough of ADCET as someone coming into the sector from a non-tertiary ed background. ADCET generally has been just a manual for our team, really, and the ADCOP has been and continues to be a great resource. So thank you, Darren. You didn't pay me either, but I find it to be an excellent resource for our service.
Excellent, thank you. We'll just sort this time difference with daylight savings at some point, and we'll all be good for our Queensland colleagues. But no, thank you, Amy, and thank you to everybody that is part of all of our communities of practice. We benefit from the knowledge of the sector as well, and we operate, as Beck said early on, responsively to the needs of the sector and those kind of things. So by hearing from people regularly, from hearing by people on the ground, what's actually happening, what they need, we can help respond where we can to that, or at least connect them with somebody that can. And the ADCOP and a lot of the communities of practice have been like that, of connecting people across. Oh, well, they're doing this over at QUT, or this is happening over at Sydney Uni, this is happening at RMIT, and here's some people to speak to that are on the ground, and speak to like-minded individuals, because it's wide and vast, and there's a lot of knowledge out there as well. And expecting somebody to have all of the answers, we certainly don't. We learn from the communities as well. So please get involved in communities of practice. We'd love to have you on board. Let me just quickly jump. Next slide. Two of our other services that we have as well, which are bookable services online, are our drop-in services. They are the UDL Studio and the ADCET Assist, which you've heard mentioned. These services provide opportunities for individual practitioners and small group discussions to come and talk about issues and find solutions to improving inclusive practices. I'll talk briefly about the ADCET Assist in a moment, but I'll throw over to Elizabeth, who's going to talk more about how the UDL Studio works as a bookable resource and how you can get involved.
Thanks so much, Darren. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Hitches. My pronouns are she, her. I have shoulder-length brown hair and on this rather warm day, a short-sleeve shirt with black and white stripes. Welcome to those of you who are joining us live and those watching the recording. I'm a teacher of inclusive education at Griffith University and of research methods at the University of Queensland, and excitingly as well, a member of CAST's National Faculty, the organisation that created UDL. Now, I get the really fun role and great privilege of co-facilitating the A Lot of Things podcast that Darren has mentioned, and I also get to co-facilitate the UDL Studio. Now, if you haven't come across UDL before, Universal Design for Learning, this is about proactively designing to ensure access for everybody and more inclusive experiences for the diverse range of individuals who might be either students at our institutions or in our communities, or staff members or associated with those. Now, when we first start applying UDL, it can be really helpful to think aloud about our ideas, to ask questions and get advice and learn from others. But we don't always have a space to do that. We don't always have that sounding board or those people to be on that journey with us. So the UDL Studio is a really informal, friendly, creative and exploratory space where you can join with me, with Darren Britton, and with Rebecca and bring along a barrier that you might have encountered, a challenge or a problem that you wish to solve. Maybe you have a resource that you think might be really accessible and inclusive, but you'd like to strengthen it further. Or maybe you just want to come along and lurk, learn and share. So in this studio, we have had various different individuals from the vet and higher education sector join with us to present resources like PowerPoint slides, to ask questions about particular guidelines that they're not really sure about how it would apply in their context, or just to get to know how do we even get started in this space. So whether you are just beginning to learn about UDL or you want to deepen your practice and you want a sounding board or a group of people to do that with you, the UDL Studio will be the place to go. So from my perspective, I look at UDL and also inclusion. Darren Britton has extensive experience in accessibility and also through that UDL lens. And Rebecca also brings with her a really deep set of experiences around the student accommodation process and disability support. So you have 3 different individual perspectives to help you in thinking through different challenges and also just to share in the joy of bringing UDL to our higher education and vet sector. So please join us, whether it's you and a friend, or a whole group. Book a session with us. We would love to have deep thinking conversations and a bit of fun with UDL with you. So we hope to see you there.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. And can I just reinforce, we try and always make sure that there's a bit of joy as one of the UDL principles, that there's always joy at these sessions. We often have people, and it's quite fine, as she said, come along, just lurk and learn in the background. I'm not quite sure. I really don't have a question, but I just want to hear what some others are doing. And that's quite fine. And we welcome that participation as well. And we often get people that are just there to lurk and learn who end up then getting engaged in the conversation, which is always lovely to hear again what people are doing from a practical standpoint, and the barriers that are getting faced, because they're all different across the sector for different reasons and different frameworks, etc. But thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that. The other one of our individualised support services, as I mentioned, is ADCET Assist, which is a support service where staff can book a one-on-one session with myself, or Rebecca can attend, or other guests if needed, or a small group session for specific questions targeted around accessibility, disability, reasonable adjustments, inclusive teaching, or assistive technology. They're half-hour bookable sessions, and we've made, I think there's 6-7 bookable spots per week that are there. So please do take advantage of those if you've got some questions to ask. And if we don't have the information or the answers, we can definitely point you in the right direction. So we're all about trying to solve problems if we can, or point you in the right direction. Now, more. I hear you say, can ADCET not do any more? Well, yes, we can, and we do. So I'm going to pass back to Beck, because that's enough from me, to hear about how we engage in other ways across the sector.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you to all our wonderful guests and collaborators. It's been such a privilege working with you all over the last year. But yes, to continue, we do more. ADCET liaises with government and peak bodies through roundtables, various advisory committees, regular consultations, and key national topics to influence policy that positively impacts the inclusion of people with disability in tertiary education. I have a lot of examples. There's been a lot of work going on, especially in the last 12 months, or well, more than the last 12 months, but I've seen it over the last 12 months. But one recent example of this work just this year already is the joint submission of ADCET and CIDA, or the Children and Young People with Disability Australia group, to the Senate Education and Employment Legislation Committee's inquiry and report on the Universities Accord Bill. Really focusing on how that legislation can be strengthened to support students with disability. Sorry. One extra thing I especially love about ADCET is how responsive we are to what is happening in the sector, as Darren was mentioning earlier, and at all levels. So the government policy level, research, what's happening in research, institutionally, and on the ground with practitioners and students. The team work very hard, but we're a very small team, and we work very hard to translate all of this into practical information and resources. And we are forever evolving. Lots of upcoming projects and resources in the pipeline and in our, dream list as well. So in the next few months, we hope, we're planning to launch an inclusive and accessible work-integrated learning e-learning program on ADCET Academy. This has been long in the making. It comes from a number of different research papers that have come out over the last few years, but specifically to do with Amani Bell and her Access Fellowship research output. And we've been working again across the sector with an advisory group to put together a really strong e-learning program targeted at will coordinators and the industry supervisors to help build that capacity for students undertaking will. We're about to publish guidelines for developing disability inclusion action plans. And we're about to commence work sponsored by the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations to update existing and develop new VET resources that will reflect the revised RTO standards from last year and will support providers to support their students with disability. So keep a lookout for those things. Please subscribe to our newsletter and you'll be updated with all things. And we certainly don't do things alone, as you have seen. We collaborate with people with lived experience, researchers, students, professionals working in this space. One of the wonderful people that we have the privilege to work with is Evie Gannon, who I hope has joined, and who many of you will be familiar with because Evie's extensive contribution to the sector. Evie, I will now pass over to you to give us an update on the work you're doing with ADCET and what we can expect in that space.
Thanks, Rebecca. Evie speaking. Hi, everyone. I'm joining from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country today. There's a little debate over the value of visual descriptions at the moment, so I'll leave mine at just sweaty. Very warm, and I've just joined from teaching a class over in the city, a gym class that is. I'm a PhD student at UNSW Canberra, and I work at the intersection of disability and public policy in my research. I also have experience as a VET student and have ADCET 4 in training and assessment. So I have experienced both study and I suppose the disability advocacy issues from both a higher ed and a vocational ed perspective. I'm autistic, have ADHD, epilepsy, and experience chronic illness. And I also have a background in disability advocacy, governance, and higher ed policy. I found ADCET initially through a webinar back when I was working as an equity practitioner at ANU, probably back around 2021. And it was really refreshing to find a place that was having really solid and confident conversations about disability, because at the time it wasn't something that I was seeing happening anywhere else. These days I engage with ADCET in a couple of different ways, often providing a student perspective. Sometimes see myself as Clippy, the little paperclip that featured in Microsoft many years ago, kind of popping up unexpectedly to remind practitioners and professionals about what it's really like to be a student with disability, navigating the systems that we are stewards of, which can be quite different in reality to what we imagine. And we all work really, really hard and are constantly developing our knowledge and skills, but sometimes what students get on the other end is not exactly what we would expect. Recently, I gave a webinar about the neurodiversity paradigm in tertiary education, so I encourage you to go onto the ADCET website and review that one, and have done a little bit of website content refreshing, but most excitingly recently, I've been working on refreshing an existing National Disability Coordination Office resource from back in 2015 about transitioning to tertiary education for autistic students. Obviously, our understanding of autistic experiences and neurodivergent experiences more broadly has shifted a lot over the last couple of years. And so it's been a real privilege to be able to update that resource and make it really responsive to what education looks like now, but also making it really neuroaffirming and designed directly by autistic students. I've collaborated with a couple of other autistic students to make this something that's really practical. There will be an online web-based version as well as a downloadable Word and PDF version for everyone's preferences, whether they want to read online, search in short grabs, print and scribble, or type and engage in that way. So really exciting to be able to be doing that kind of multiple formats UDL approach to support all sorts of different learning preferences. And really the purpose of this resource is to demystify some of the experiences around transitioning to further education. Autistic people, we really love detail. We love knowing what to expect. And we love being able to find those things in one reliable place. This resource fills, I suppose, a little bit of a gap in what universities are able to provide to autistic students at the moment in terms of tailored support, particularly around parts of university that disability practitioners don't always see. the parts outside of the classroom, the cultures that we operate in. And the resource also includes a range of different worksheets, guidebooks to help students really prepare to make the most out of their learning experience. So very excited by that. I'm sure Rebecca will be able to update on sort of the timeline for when that will be coming out, so keep an eye out. But it's been, a real privilege to be able to work on that, and certainly looking forward to developing some supplementary materials and also some content that looks at the broader range of neurotypes under the neurodiversity umbrella as well. But back to you, Rebecca. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Evie, and thank you again for sharing your knowledge with us. Just in regards to that timeline, we're so close. Website under construction, so stay tuned again, everyone. Hopefully ASAP it'll be out. And what a valuable resource it is. I've continued to learn so much from Evie. And so any of you who are unfamiliar with Evie's work, please do look up the previous webinars, and also Evie's Higher Hopes podcast and blog, always so enlightening and really valuable. So I really recommend people to engage with Evie's work. Amazing. Now, moving on. With regards to our future dreams, sorry, this was me just sort of putting bits and pieces together here at the end. I'm not sure how much time I'd have left, but with regards to our future dreams, over the past 12 months, we've been working very closely with the Department of Education and the University of Tasmania and the brilliant Professor Sally Kiff to determine an expanded and sustainable ADCET. All is looking very positive, and again, we're starting to, start building those ideas of what we can achieve and how we can continue to bring the SEC together and really enhance our reach. And the team has endless great ideas for expanding this scope. I cheekily included in my list here, facilitating a lived experience student leadership and advisory group, as this is number one on my wish list. And I've been in early discussions with students from Student Voice Australasia and the National Union of Students, and looking at how we can collaborate and facilitate a group that, can provide that feedback and guidance and be brought in for co-designing across the sector. Very exciting. But again, that was number one on my wish list. There's plenty more in the pipeline. Again, we're looking to expand the ADCET Academy training programs in a number of ways. And again, as Darren was mentioning, very responsive to the sector and seeing, what that need is and where it goes. And even with the last year, the review of the Disability Discrimination Act and the Disability Standards for Education, responding to any changes or advice received on those reviews. So always here ready to help. Darren, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. Just with the little time we've got left, so to sum up, how can you get involved with ADCET and with the community more broadly? Firstly, you can join a community practice, as we mentioned, subscribe to our newsletter, join the Ofsted emailing list that's there, book an ADCET assist session, bookmark ADCET. Things often change on our website. There's almost weekly, if not daily, sometimes updates that are happening there. Undertake an e-learning program, as was mentioned through the ADCET Academy, and get yourself a digital badge, which you can highlight on LinkedIn and other platforms, etc. that's there. Come to the UDL Symposium, book that. Hopefully there'll still be offerings for online attendance as well. So we try and do things the best we can from a UDL approach and make a fully hybrid event for people. Nominate a colleague for an Accessibility in Action Award, and details for those will be coming out shortly as well for this year's nominations. Attend a webinar. We do regular webinars, at least more often than not, 2 a month. Join the UDL studio, come lurk and learn if you just want to find out about, or book an ADCET assist session if you've got some very specific questions. And if not, you can always just contact us via email, etc. All of those are in the links provided on the webpage that Kylie's just put back into chat there. So let me just wrap up and say thank you, everybody, for coming along and listening and finding out a bit more all about ADCET. Sometimes we forget what we offer because there's so many bits and pieces. So we wanted to have this opportunity to say, look, there's more than just one side of ADCET. There's lots of different things that we do. We often forget that, and people engage with us in different ways. And a special thank you to our special guests today, to Trina, Danielle, Evie, Justin, Amy, Elizabeth, and Katie for your contribution and showing us how we connect into the sector. Because without people's involvement, ADCET wouldn't exist. We rely on, as we've said, that's there. So it's a full circle. It sounds like a love fest in here. It is a bit. We love the community. We love what we do. And we love the people that are doing the work. So we just want to hear more about that. I'll throw back to you, Beck, for questions, and we're perfectly on time.
I know, I'm so excited. I was so stressed that we were going to go crazy over, but here we are, perfectly on time. And there's a couple of questions in the chat that I would like to respond to. Barb has asked, is there a similar community of practice for vet TAFE managers? And this was also, I saw in the chat as well from Emma, and that refers to the community of practice for the disability services managers that ADCET facilitates. Currently, it's only for the higher education, so university managers, and that's sort of based on our funding models at this point, but certainly the need is there and we could look to expand. In the meantime, I highly recommend you join up with ATTEND. They are the Australian Tertiary Education Network on Disability, and they facilitate networking and those sorts of communities of practice across the whole tertiary sector. And I believe Jane has just put the link to ATTEND in the chat box. So please do look up them and stay tuned, potentially for a vet version of the disability managers community of practice. There was another question, but I believe it has been answered. I believe it was to do with how to book UDL Studio and ADCET Assist, and obviously that's been answered. Completely free. The links are in the chat. Get online, book them, come see us. I especially love, Darren often invites me to the ADCET Assist, and, I love to come and just, contribute and learn and see what's going on in the sector. So we get as much from it as you guys do. So please get involved. Darren, was there anything else you wanted to add, or I do the wrap up?
No, I think that's about it. Yet those services are certainly free, like most of what ADCET does. We're paid by the department to help support students. The ADCET Assist sessions are half hour. The UDL Studio sessions are an hour. Although we could get together and talk all afternoon, but time always limits it to do other things. So please book in, come and find out more about those. But I'll throw back to you for the wrap up, Rebecca. But thank you everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And thank you again to our special speakers. Thank you to our captioner, Sharon. An email will be sent to everyone when the recording of this webinar is available on the ADCET website. So please feel free, and we encourage you to share this with your colleagues. We ask that you complete our short survey on this webinar and sign up to our newsletter. These links will now be added to the chat box. Please keep an eye out for our upcoming webinars focused on improving pre-admission guidance for disabled university applicants and AI smart glasses. Further information and dates will be available soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.